This is TV18 and you're watching CNBC TV18.
Let me first of all thank all of you for being here. My topic is my personal mantras, which could be relevant for entrepreneurs. So who is an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a person who wants to leave a footprint in society. He wants to transform lives. He wants to create meaning. He's so focused on the meaning that nothing phases him. Not the mundane rigor of getting the idea off the drawing board into the marketplace. The only thing that drives him is the goal, and the goal lays the road he makes. An entrepreneur is someone who invented the phrase, I can. I'll now move on to my own journey. I started at a very young age. Did my graduation from Bombay. At the age of 20, I joined the family business. I couldn't get admission into a management school. Not that bright. So my father asked me to join the business. I wanted to go abroad. He said no. And that's how I joined the family business. And when I joined the business, it was a completely family managed organization. Nobody to train me, nobody to guide me. And my father just let me loose, saying that you do whatever you want to do, just explore, visit different businesses. And in that exploration, I chanced upon the consumer products part of the business. So many times, I read that entrepreneurs need to have a very clear vision of what they want to do. My view is quite the opposite. I didn't have any clue when I joined the business what I wanted to do. And as I started concentrating on consumer products, I realized that yes, this was definitely my calling. But from edible oils, we went to other personal care products, foods, and then we went into services in Kaya. So my first learning was that this vision part, it evolves. You don't have a clear vision when you start your business. As the business environment changes, you get newer opportunities. And there is a negative in very tightly defined vision, because many times you may get certain opportunities which you would miss out on if you have very, very close, tightly held vision. So my first mantra is that let the vision get evolved and keep it a little flexible, because many times you'll get opportunities which may be beyond what you have defined the vision. And you should, of course, pursue these opportunities. And that's what I've done over a period of time. Of late, I've just started a new business in healthcare, which is a rehab center for recovery from different injuries. I never thought I would do all this. I never thought I would start something like Kaya when I started Marico or when I started consumer products. But something happened, somebody came into my life, and that's how I got new ideas and did something new which has added a lot of value to me and enriched me a lot. So I'm sure you'll agree that every entrepreneur faces a lot of roadblocks, setbacks in their own journey. I've had multiple setbacks also. In the initial days when I started working, our office was located in the heart of commodity markets, Masjid Bandar. Very crowded area, lot of hand carts, lorries, warehouses. Very difficult to get into the office, no parking place. And as we started recruiting talent, we started calling people to our office for interviews, and most of the time, before entering the office, the potential candidate who was called, he would just run away. So I had to overcome that negative, so I started calling them to the Wellington Club, meet them once, twice, sell them the story, and then later on bring them to the office. In the initial years, I was not able to attract good talent, so I had to identify individual consultants in functional areas like marketing, HR, and work with them. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it's very important to have that burning desire to succeed. If you have that desire to succeed, you'll overcome all the issues in life. And when I'm recruiting any person, the first thing I see in that person is that how strong is that burning desire to succeed? Because if you have that inner drive within you, you will overcome all your negatives, all your setbacks. So they say passion is very important for any entrepreneur. I agree, passion is very important. But if you are just passionate and if you don't have that determination and perseverance, you may just leave something halfway. The right word for this is grit, which is a combination of passion combined with perseverance and determination. And I think that's what my second mantra is, that you have to build your grit and not just passion. The earlier days, my next mantra is always to have win-win negotiations. In my earlier days, I was also handling the factories and labor negotiations, and that time our union leader was Dr. Datta Samant. I'm sure many of you heard of him. Very militant, and I used to negotiate with him our settlements. And being young, I always wanted to win. The next one I want to share is that each of us has a God-given gift. God has given us some gifts, and each person has a different set of gifts. Many of us don't realize what is our God-given gift. And I would urge each of you to identify your God-given gift. Many of us may have a blind spot that this is a gift I have. I would urge that you get hold of your family, your friends who know you well, and ask them, how do they perceive you? What is my God-given gift? And finally, the last point I wanted to make was, I think beyond a threshold level, most entrepreneurs are not driven by a monetary vision. They want to make an impact. Give back something to the society. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage son of Mr. Rahul Bajaj, Chairman of Bajaj Group and Managing Director of Bajaj Auto, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj.
I'm sure as I walked up, at least a couple of you have noticed my white shoes. कोई सोच रहा होगा जितेंद्र के जूते पहन के आया है. So this is my trick on the occasion of the hat trick of ASCENT, that even if you don't remember me for what I said, you will remember me for my shoes. It's a great privilege to be here. I've been asked to speak on the subject called If I Knew Then What I Know Now. So in other words, if I were to be able to reflect, what would I think would have been precious to know before, 20 years ago, that I know now? And I think the most important thing would be to know, for me to have known then, which I did not know then, that fortune favors the brand, because I'm an engineer and engineers believe in products, engineers don't understand brands. And I've had to climb up that learning curve in my own hard way. As Mr. Mariwala mentioned, we are all part of a business environment where success is very elusive. I call it almost a crime, because to fail 90 or 95% of the time in what we do is very hard to condone. I mean, just ask yourself, you know, would we send our children to schools that fail 90-95% of the time? Would we go to doctors that fail 90-95% of the time? Would we believe in a sport that fail 90-95% of the time? Would we believe in marriage? Okay, let's not go there. We can leave that out right now. And if you think that this is a statistic that comes from consultants, let me give you another piece of information that comes straight from the Mecca of management. Next, please. So like Mr. Mariwala, I am not a great fan of business schools either. But my family is, they all went to Harvard Business School. I am the only one that did not get admission to Harvard Business School. Even my brother-in-law was a great visionary. He went to Harvard Business School only so he could get married to my sister 10 years later. Manish Kejriwal, maybe some of you know him. So this is a statistic that comes from the Harvard Business Review of 2011, which effectively again says that very, very few products and services actually succeed. And I find this a little ironic, because in my view, the people that fail very often fail doing the stuff that is taught at Harvard Business School. So when I started my own journey, I contemplated, as we all have done, you know, what makes success. Is it based on technology? When I looked at competition, especially from Japan in the form of Honda and Yamaha, this was an obvious. Quality, as Mr. Mariwala said, no shortcuts there. Cost is always important. Distribution is important. Advertising or communication is important. All of this is important. But somehow, I was not very convinced. Because I saw too many examples of companies that had great technology but were not necessarily successful, that had great quality but were not necessarily successful. And in fact, it seemed to me that levers like those of distribution or advertising were not actually the cause of success, but the result of success. I mean, when you start on day one with one product, how do you go out there and create a huge distribution network? Or how do you get 10 or 20 or 100 crore to advertise? You cannot. You have to earn it. And it is only after you are successful that you are actually able to go out there and create or rather scale up and create the distribution network you want or afford the spends that you would like to have in advertising. So some of these are not even the cause of success, they are the result of success. And I believe very much in what Warren Buffett said, that invest in companies that an idiot can run, because one day an idiot will. Thank you very much.
The rise of Gujarat as India's growth hub.
The growth of Gujarat has been exponential in the last 15 years.
Catch the curtain raiser episode of Vibrant Gujarat Global Summit 2019 at these times only on CNBC TV18.
Comfy, comfy, comfy. Comfy, comfy, comfy.
MRF ZLX. Comfort made more comfortable.
Watch government and industry leaders pave the way for digital opportunities in 5G and discuss the possibilities of augmented and virtual reality among Indian masses. Catch India Mobile Congress 2018 at these times on CNBC TV18.
Presented by COAI.
Sir, like in cricket, we have a sweep shot, cut shot, just like that. This has a top shot. So if there's any mistake, the phone automatically recommends a better picture.
So you're saying I make a lot of mistakes?
No, sir, sometimes the picture...
Relax, I'm joking. Show me the picture.
म्यूजिक समिट से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ फ्रॉम द वर्ड गो, क्योंकि इसका जो शीर्षक गीत है, टाइटल सॉन्ग है, वो मैंने कंपोज किया है। और जब उन्होंने इसका एक जो टैगलाइन है, जो है एक सच्चा सुर, जब उन्होंने वो किया, उस सच्चा सुर को लेके ही मैंने कंपोज किया है। प्रसून जी ने लिखा हुआ है। सो आई एम एसोसिएटेड विद दिस फ्रॉम डे वन।
I'm thrilled to have a very erudite and accomplished set of panelists to work with and through. I think the most important perspective that I want to invite is really the entrepreneur's perspective, the entrepreneur's dilemma, the employer's dilemma. What really keeps an entrepreneur awake when it comes to talent? What are the hopes that you have from talent? What do you struggle with? So maybe Lavanya, maybe you can give us an opening perspective of what do you really see as issues and challenges, and what answers would you be typically prioritizing for?
So as you know, we're a family-run business. We've been in the business for 90 years. And it started with a flagship store in 1928, which is still now in Chennai. And if you look at the average tenure of a salesperson there, it's 8 years. That's average, which means that half of those people have actually spent more than that. Now, we know what the attrition is for frontline employees. We know what the attrition is for salespeople. So to achieve that is really something of an anomaly. And the way that I suppose we do it is it's less about core values and you put it up on the walls or anything, but it's more about if I catch any 3 people in my organization from frontline, mid-level, senior management, whoever it is, and I ask them, what does this company stand for? What are your top 3 priorities? What are their top 3 priorities? Will you hear consistency in their responses? And I think if as an organization, as an entrepreneur or as business people we're able to do that, then that is what really builds that culture. And then do they really act on those core values? So one of the things that we've considered our core value is as a family business, we think of the employees also as members of the family. And if you think about it, when a customer walks into a retail establishment such as ours, the first person they're going to see is the salesperson, and the last person they're going to see is the salesperson. They're not going to come up to management and talk to you, or whoever is the head of merchandising or whoever is the head of strategy or anybody who's sitting somewhere else. So your frontline really is the face of the organization, and you've got to treat them as such. And so what we've done is we've actually quite empowered them. All of our, and it's a bunch of different things, of course, not just the training programs. So what we do is much more of an apprentice model. It's less about, we do give them training programs, and they've got their manuals and all of that. But what they have is also a very strong induction program. They come in as a salesperson, and then they sort of shadow a senior person. They're sort of apprenticed through that model. And we very rarely do lateral hires at mid-level positions. It's typically people from within the organization who rise through the ranks. The incentive structure and all of that is also set up almost by design to be a little Darwinian, so that your best salespeople are the ones that you want to retain. And the folks who really are not that strong, even after the guidance and the apprenticeship and everything that you've given them, automatically they will drop out of the system, because they feel that they have better prospects elsewhere. Because here with their variable pay and the way that the incentives are structured, they really are not able to measure up. And so it's, if you look at it, a lot of people say, no, what I want is talent to stay. And that's the big pain point, and that's, we just don't find talent, and when they come in, they don't have that ownership mindset. But I think some of the onus is also on the entrepreneur. Right? How do you train up your talent? How do you give them that visibility? How do you, of their career trajectory, their career growth? How do you create those opportunities, and also give them not just that security, but that push and that ambition to say, if I do feel that I'm a strong performer and I vie for more than just a sales job, I can see that there has been that track record in the organization, and they're going to stand behind me.
Brilliant. I think you've touched on many chords, but I'm going to pick on the start. And maybe, Nicholas, I'll look at you. Why do you think, and how do you think would a mid-size enterprise appeal to talent across a diaspora? Do you think that's where they want to go, or do they want to go to something that they think is bigger and better? And what would your advice be to entrepreneurs for this?
So I'm in the business of recruitment, so we recruit people from 25, 30 lakhs upwards. And every time when we speak to candidates, in most cases they speak about, I want to join an MNC. Yeah? That's the first thing which we often see as the criteria for selection, whether people are already in an MNC or whether they are in a company in India. Yeah? Now, what we realize is that when people during their career, and most of us would have a career of 30 years, hopefully, is that the role becomes more and more important the longer people are in their career. In the beginning, it's all about the brand, MNC, and so on. So the aspiration changes over time, but it is still a big aspiration to be part for an MNC. Now, where you can make a difference is, and it's coming a little bit back to what I just heard about consistency, empowering. These are a lot of words which actually are very important for people when they join a company. And I feel I've seen companies, domestic Indian companies, and I'm talking mid-sized, where I see a promoter, if I can call him like that, being very open to empower, and I've seen a lot of successes of people integrating in these companies. But I've also seen the other thing. They say all the right things, but then when on the day the person joins, they don't empower. They want to keep control. They say, yeah, but the person first needs to prove themselves before I can give them that task. So there's a lot of resistance on really giving the people the opportunity to grow. I love the experience you have by growing people internally. I think that is very key. We do actually exactly the same in our company. And hiring lateral, although it's against my business, is not the only solution. I think you really need to work on your own talent pipeline and think how I can grow the company. Sometimes you need to hire laterally. That's done mainly when you want to make a shift in business. When you, for example, want to grow your e-commerce platform and you need certain skill sets, I can imagine you would need. But in cases where it's business as usual, try to grow that talent from within, because that's how you're going to retain them, and you're going to have people who are really engaged and want to invest in the company.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that perspective. And actually, it gets me to think of more questions. And I'm going to turn to you, Sunit. You've been a consultant for over 2 decades now.
Couple of decades, yeah.
Yeah. And you've had a huge diaspora of clients, MNCs and mid-scale entrepreneurs. I just heard from Nicholas that at the end of it, a lot depends on the experience with the entrepreneur. Let go. You talked about it, Lavanya, also, that, the entrepreneur's responsibility of trying to keep talent, grow talent. So when you look at entrepreneurs and entrepreneur-driven companies and cultures, what do you think, Sunit, typically goes right? And what would your advice be for things which typically don't go right?
No, I think that's the thought that kind of got generated in my mind as well as I was hearing to both Lavanya and to Nicholas. With your permission, Prabir, can I ask for a show of hands in the audience? Sure. Okay, so simple question, and all of you run your businesses, and I understand varying sizes, very diverse industries. So the question is simple. How many of you believe that attracting, retaining, and developing your people is the #1 job that you have? Or how many of you believe that? Show of hands, please. Okay. So about 40%?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. I think 40% is good. I was expecting lower than that. So that emboldens me to essentially address your first question in terms of when does it go right. I think one of the misconceptions, and I'm going to be slightly provocative here, Prabir. One of the misconceptions or myths that I want to bust is the fact that we believe that, what works in large global scale companies, multinational, Indian, Indonesian, Chinese, does not work in smaller organizations.
Correct.
100 people organizations, 500 people organizations, 1,000. I think let's remember one thing. People, human beings, have the same needs. Whether they work in a large, huge conglomerate, which is global, or they work in a small startup, which is 10 people, or they work in a mid-sized company, which is maybe 500 people. And I think one of the important things to remember, and that's the reason I asked you the question, is, organizations become shadows of their leaders. So, while you all may want to call yourselves entrepreneurs, and you are entrepreneurs, absolutely. I mean, I'm someone who's, forget about running a business. I have an HR background, but unlike Prabir, I've never done HR in my life. I've only consulted. So I always have this small joke about myself. Those who can do and those who can't consult, right? They start giving advice. So the thing is that it boils down to you as leaders. I think and it also talks to the point that Lavanya made about experience, consistency. I think that's what gets right. So in the places, Prabir, where I worked over the last many years, and I remember one of my first clients when I started off my career was actually a sub-1,000 crore mid-sized business, family owned. And I think what I saw there was the fact that clearly there was this, and some of you, I'm very happy, acknowledge that running the business is one thing, but I think making sure that we have the right people, we're treating them correctly, we are rewarding, recognizing them in the right manner, we are being fair and consistent, is the primary job of the leader of the organization. Now, you may have an HR person or even a function which takes care of the policies, the practices, and all of that, but the accountability rests with you. I think that's the first point. And I think that brings me to the other point of where does this lead us to, and the aspect of experience. And there's some sociology research that I'm quoting over here. it's what it says is that irrespective of how many people you have on your social media or how large an organization you work in, what you experience of an organization is a much smaller set. I mean, even for instance, I work in an organization that is almost 500,000 people globally. But if I were to tell you the people who are relevant to me in my experience as an employee in Accenture, I probably won't go beyond 50 or 60. The really important people who I would talk to, who talk to me, with whom I have a relationship. And the sociological research is that cultures typically change at about 150 people. Now, I don't know why it is. There's some research done on tribal societies that beyond 150, you start seeing shifts in culture. So the reason I say this is because even in some of your organizations, you're probably already at a scale where there may not be one uniform culture. But whatever your skill may be, it's very important for you to set an example and be very clear of what those behaviors, those practices are that embody your culture. And if there are people who are aligned to that culture, they'll stay with you. I think we heard from Lavanya about that. And the people who are not aligned to that, who potentially will find other options. So I think these are the two broad points I'll make. So kind of wrapping it up, I think just to kind of talk about takeaway. Firstly, I think the one provocative takeaway is don't think just because of scale, some of the things that you read about, the Googles and the Amazons of the world don't work for you. That's one. And second is, it's your responsibility to set the right tone in terms of culture, and that's probably more important than any HR tool, system, or practice that you'll implement.
I couldn't have had a better set of panelists to help me plot this. Thank you very much, Nicholas, Lavanya, Sunit, for helping us through our conversations. On behalf of all of us here, a big thank you to all of you and to the organizers for having us here. Thank you very much.